What's up, guys? This is the Draft Dodgers. And during this cycle, there's probably no class that's easier and more fun to talk about than the offensive tackles. Let's get into it. And we're here. I'm Dom C. of Project Prospect, here with my esteemed colleague, Tigo from Talking Jets with Tigo. Tigo, how are you, my friend?
Doing much better now that we get to talk about the draft instead of dwelling on what happened this past Sunday with our New York Jets.
Oof, I know. I got a little raspy voice, a lot of screaming, and a lot of yelling, a lot of support for absolutely no offensive production, but that's for another video. We're here. We're the Draft Dodgers, and it's so exciting, so exciting. This cycle has been so fun. The start of it, right? These prospects and stuff like that are just balling out. Yesterday, conference championship day was a great day of football from top to bottom, man. And then the college football, they had a big choice to make here in the for their playoffs here, the top four. How do you think they did, by the way? Curious.
I think they messed up.
You think they messed up?
I think they messed up.
You
I
think
understand why Florida State's not in. Don't get me wrong. But the NCAA has done nothing but set the precedent of undefeated conference champions, undefeated Power 5 champs make it in. That has been the standard that has been set.
Yeah.
That's what we've been told. But I honestly think that what it came down to is that the NCAA was too scared to not put an SEC team in the CFP. And so they took an Alabama team that, to be fair, deserves to be there. And as of right now is probably better than FSU. But the NCAA, one, I think should be abolished. I think the Power 5, well, they're not Power 5 because the Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore. I think the Power 4 conferences need to band together and just do their own thing apart from the NCAA. But not putting in Florida State, what I think is going back on the precedent that they set. And that's the issue I have with it.
They want the top four teams in the college playoffs, right? And it's hard to argue that they didn't get the top four teams as they stand right here, right now.
No, they got that right.
Yeah.
But TCU made it in last year, and I didn't think that they were one of the top four teams, but they made it in, and we saw that game in the semifinals. So if you're cool with putting in teams, TCU was not one of the best four teams, in my opinion. And you're cool with putting them in and getting a blowout in the semifinal, who cares? Florida State's defense deserves to play in a playoff game, in my opinion.
Listen, truth be told, I feel bad for those kids. They did everything that they were asked to. They came together when Jordan Travis went down and still found a way to win football games, when they mattered. So yeah. I feel bad for those kids. I feel bad for the NCAA because they were put into a tough spot. But it is what it is. And we got four teams in there. And whatever happens with the playoffs happens with the playoffs. I'm pretty stoked.
Me too.
To know that we're going to have some really, really good games. Michigan and Alabama, leading off, and Texas, Washington is just going to be fun.
Electric. I'm excited because I have Texas over Washington and I have Alabama over Michigan. So we get a rematch of that week 2, down in Tuscaloosa that was the upset of the year, if we're talking about it, right? And we get that rematch for, the chip. I'm really excited for that game.
Yeah.
If it plays out that way.
And in the college playoffs, the four teams, I mean, you're going to see a lot of names, and obviously there's a lot of guys and a lot of names that have had the pleasure and luxury of studying up to this point so far, and going to get a lot more in depth with. Some of those are going to be this position group that we're going to talk about today, man. This offensive tackle class is really, really good.
Yeah.
I think, I don't think I'm going out on a limb here on December 3rd, whatever today's date is, to say that, if we heard 15 tackles come off the board by the end of round 3, I wouldn't be all that surprised. What say you, man?
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Dude, I think you might have even been a little bit generous on your number. Like it would not surprise me if this is the class that breaks the number of offensive tackles taken in the first round. If it breaks the record for number of offensive tackles taken on days 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
If you need an offensive tackle, this is the class for you, because you've got some absolutely studs at the top of the board, and then it continues, right? And then you've got some really good players, and then you got guys with really good potential. Then you got guys who are going to take some time, but this class is loaded with offensive tackle talent. And again, like I said, if you need offensive line help, period, this is the class to get it, because so many of these guys, like, there are guys on our list that we can't even agree on that are going to play inside, that are going to play outside. This class is loaded.
Yeah, I agree, and like I said, I don't know how many are going to go in the first round. I will say this: I think if we've learned anything watching this 2023 season of the NFL, it shows you how much of a premium the offensive line is, and how much of a premium the offensive tackle, both right and left, really is. So,
Yeah.
I mean, forget about injuries. Just to have good depth at, and good talent at these vital, critical positions can make or break a season. Can make or break a season. So, and it's funny because there's a lot of teams that, and take it for what it's worth. Like, you go through these mock draft simulators and so on and so forth. But even when you just break it down and break down all 32 teams in the NFL, there's probably 20 of them. And I'm throwing a number kind of randomly, but I would say there's probably 20 of them, to maybe even more than that, in the first round, where if you took an offensive tackle, you'd say, okay, yeah, I get it.
It's a good pick.
Yeah. Even the teams that historically or year in, year out have the strongest offensive lines in the league. Philadelphia, for instance, listen, their offensive line is as good as it gets
best in the NFL
when it comes to NFL standards. And it wouldn't surprise me at 32, if they went ahead and, found a, potential replacement for Lane Johnson, or just some more depth or so on and so forth. So there's tons of tackles that are in need. And the good thing is that this class, I think, is
has the supply,
has some depth. Yeah. Listen, I don't think that there's 10, 11, 12 like plug and play kind of guys, but I think you're going to have some guys that can come in, definitely make NFL rosters and push for starting jobs sooner rather than later. So why don't we do this, and why don't we bring up, boom, here's our list.
Yeah.
And you'll see the names are, actually the first 4 names are, just identical as you have them and as I have them. Now you're going to see some different names, and the one thing I will point out is you have some names in there that I think are great players, but I when I was putting together my list and my rankings for for film study, for anything else, you have some guys that I'm classifying or grouping in with the interior offensive linemen, specifically Graham Barton and Troy Fatanu.
Yeah.
So,
and we'll talk about them when we get to them, but there are reasons, because I did the same thing last year with Peter Skoronski, where I didn't have him on my tackle list, because I feel like I'm going back on that standard that I set last year, this year with those guys, and we'll talk about them when we get to them. But yeah, we'll talk about it when we get there.
Yeah. So, we got guys, like I said, our first 4 are identical, right? And we got Olu Fashanu from Penn State, number 1. We got Joe Alt from Notre Dame, number 2. We got Talisa Fuaga from Oregon State, number 3. And J.C. Latham from Alabama, number 4. I don't think there's, listen, you'd be pulling hairs to say this one's better than that one, so on and so forth. I think pretty much throughout any rankings or draft nick that you'll find, you'll see those 4 names at the top if not top 4, but close enough to at the top. The orders may vary a little bit. But those guys are the guys that I think, we talk about plug and play players. I think those guys can come in to an NFL team in year 1 and earn a starting job right off the get go. Now from there, I go to Jordan Morgan from Arizona, then follow it up with Kingsley Suamatia from BYU. I got Armarius Mims from Georgia, number 7, Patrick Paul, number 8, Tyler Guyton, the big nasty from Oklahoma, number 9, and Javon Foster from Missouri, number 10. Your list varies a little bit different after Latham at 4. You have Graham Barton up at 5, Armarius Mims at 6, Jordan Morgan at 7, Patrick Paul from Houston at 8, Troy Fatanu from Washington at 9, and you follow number 10 up with Kingsley. So like I said, 8 of the 10 guys that we have on here are the same. The order might vary different. So I think what we should do is really just let's get into these top guys. Let's get into the guys where we're matching a lot and kind of break these guys down for a little bit. They're the pros, the cons, and what else whatever else you see in these guys. So I'll kick it off to you, and I'll give you the honors of talking about the potential best offensive tackle in this class in Olu Fashanu.
Yeah, Olu is such an interesting prospect. I love the idea of Olu, and I think that whatever team at the top of the draft that's going to take him, and I think that you and I both agree that he is going to be the first tackle taken, and rightfully so. When you go into a lab and you want to build an offensive tackle, this Olu is exactly what everybody is trying to achieve. Size, he's got it. Weight, he's got it. Length, he's got it. Strength, he's got it. Fluidity in his footwork, he's got it. The kid checks off every box that you want, and he's not even 21. I don't even think that he'll be 21 when the draft hits. I think he is still no. He is 21 now. He will be 21 in 6 days. I don't know why I know this, but I do know his birthday is December 9th. But like the crazy thing is that when he will be 21 years old, and here's the thing, I don't think he's anywhere near his ceiling as a prospect. I think he has the highest ceiling of any player in this class. And when you talk about how fluid he is in his footwork, one of the deadliest just punches in this class, great hands, great athleticism, patient in the pass game. He feels comfortable moving forward and backwards. So do you need him to get in there in the run game and move some people? He's got you. Do you need him to drop back and hold some guys up? He's got you. He can do all of that stuff. Remarkable short area quickness and athleticism, can pick up a stunt and a twist and a turn and all of those things really, 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 really well. The one thing that I'll say about Olu that I think people need to watch out for if they're thinking about Olu to their team is that when I see him playing, I see him thinking a little bit too much. Instead of just being in the moment, reacting to what's coming at him, I kind of see him in his head a little bit too much. And I think the biggest reason for that is because he came to football late. He's not a guy who played football his whole life. He came to football in high school, which, fun fact, he went to the same high school as Caleb Williams, another player in this draft class. But that's besides the point. He came to football late, so sometimes his inexperience in just being able to react to certain things catches up to him. I think with more reps and more time, you're looking at a guy that can legitimately be one of the best tackles in all of football, and that's why I have Olu Fashanu as my number 1 tackle in this class.
Yeah, I think Olu, I mean, you talked about it. I mean, the size, the traits, the athleticism for a guy that big is just like, it's like stuff we haven't seen, before at all. I think his ceiling in pass protection and what he can offer right off the get go is immense. Right now, the big catch for him, what I wanted to see from coming from last year to this year was if he got a little bit more of that finisher mentality, especially in the run. There were times where he would he would engage, and then kind of everything from the waist down would stop moving. So he didn't finish his blocks too well. He's not the people mover that some of these other guys in this class are. The pure road grading type offensive tackles. But from an overall perspective, especially as a pure left tackle, which I think he is, um, his mirroring skills, his kick step is, he always hits his marks, always in balance, just knows how to, adjust and like you talked about, adjust real quick and not get beat from the inside on the games and the twists. He doesn't, speed around the edge doesn't bother him. As a matter of fact, I think coming into this year, I think he had allowed one quarterback hurry in his career. Now that has taken a dip. He's had some, he had some trouble, especially against JT Tuilamolau at Ohio State, who got him pretty good. But that's another guy who is going to be a top 50 pick in this draft class too. So it's not like he's it's not like he's a choke artist of any sort. I mean, sometimes when good players meet good players, one of them's going to win and one's going to lose. And, it seemed that day that JT got the better. But yeah, I mean, the ceiling and the traits that Fashanu gets for me is something that I think all 32 NFL GMs are going to salivate over and crave.
They're going to fall in love with the kid.
Yeah, he's a left tackle, through and through. Like I said,
yep.
Tyron Smith, he's a younger, more athletic even than Tyron Smith. When Tyron Smith came out of USC for Dallas way back when, I think Olu Fashanu, can come in and kind of be that kind of player. If we're going to give some kind of comps to him. Yeah. So
talk to me about Notre Dame's Joe Alt. Right. A lot of people fell in love with Joe Alt. They had Joe Alt, a lot of people, as offensive tackle going into this year.
Yeah.
And I feel like he got a little bit dethroned by the Olu Love and all of that stuff. I didn't have him at number 1, and we can see that here. Tell me why people should be excited about Joe Alt out of Notre Dame.
Well, they should be scared of Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, if you ask me. Listen, we talked about a lot of the same thing. You touched on some stuff with Fashanu. Joe Alt is that as well. I mean, guy's humongous, right? 6'8", 325 pounds, long arms, like 7.5-inch wingspan. And the craziest thing about Joe Alt is, he got recruited as a tight end. He played his first half of his year in 2021 as a tight end for Notre Dame, before transitioning into tackle. Like I said, at 6'8", just a big, solid man. And, he is nasty. And that's what I love about him. He first off, we talked about the punch that Olu has. I mean, Joe Alt plays with some heavy hands, and he does, he can stop a guy in his track just alone with his punch. He's precise with it. He knows, technically, his hands are always in the right spots. Throws those big meat hooks, those big strong stances. Those big strong hands with a good solid base. Doesn't really get jacked off of his base too much. Good anchor. He knows how to use that length exceptionally well. He knows angles and he understands how to wall off when he needs to wall off, and let speed, chases speed right past the quarterback, so on and so forth. He plays football at a very, very high, with very, very high intellect,
Yes.
and on top of that, like, just watching him get that big man, like I said, 6'8", 325 pounds, get out of his stance and just fire out. It's so quick. You love to see it. He's got those, he's just got those twitchy movements that you don't expect to see from a guy who's, 6'8". Nasty run blocker. Much more so, I think, that one specific thing, I think I'd give the check mark to Joe Alt,
Yes.
in regards to the arguably, maybe between him and Talise as the best run blockers in the class. He's a people mover, man. You know what I mean? Just constantly moving, constantly driving, finishing his blocks. Just really, really good movement skills. Can get vertically up into the second level. So I don't think he's going to be scheme specific at all. Like I said, I just all around. I think it's one and one. It's 1A and 1B between him and Fashanu. Um, I just think that the ceiling might be a little bit higher on Fashanu than Alt, but the floor is probably a little bit higher on Alt. There's something that I picked up on some of his game film this year, is that sometimes he has a tendency to get caught, with a bull rush. He kind of can get blown off or lose that anchor real quick, but he's quick to re-anchor. And his athletic ability has helped him help that not be a problem at the college level. Something that he's going to have to work on. Just a little bit more, strength in the hips, a little bit more core strength to help that initial anchor, so he doesn't get kind of blown off on those power rushes. But like I said, I think he can automatically step in at either left tackle, right tackle, and play there for the next 15 years. Also, just 21 years old, true junior. So,
I think the great thing about Alt is that, like, with both Alt and Fashanu, they're already so good. But like you said, he didn't come to college as a tackle.
mm-hmm.
And you see that in his game. And even with all of that being said, he's still the second best tackle in this class. And the thing I love about Joe Alt specifically is that, and you mentioned it a little bit, but I want to rehark on this point, is that he was a tight end.
Yeah.
Who transferred and then played tackle exceptionally well. And you see that when he plays, when he's moving, you see the tight end in it, because he is so athletic and he can move all 6'8", 225 pounds of him really, 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 really well. And that's the thing that I love about both Fashanu and both Alt, is that they know how to maneuver all of that mass and the muscle and all of that thing to get into the right place. If Alt can fix his anchor, right, and get better with his footwork, I think whenever he goes into a situation, this is the football IQ coming back into it, he always has a backup plan. If his first punch doesn't work, he has quick enough hands to reset without losing the rep, which is something a lot of these young guys coming into the NFL don't have. I love that about Alt, is the ability to reset quickly and to try again with a punch and to get his hands back to his frame and all of that stuff. So yeah, I love Joe Alt. I love talking about Joe Alt.
Yeah, and listen, and like I said, the way he moves in space so fluidly, like you can tell that, he has spent some time at a skill position. You know what I mean? And at that big frame, like I said, I really don't think that there's a scheme that Joe Alt doesn't fit in. I don't care if it's outside zone. I don't care if it's, power on duo blocks, all that jazz. There's nothing that Joe Alt, I don't think, doesn't check the, doesn't, hit the level for. So, number 3, high riser over the past couple weeks. It seems to be the name that everyone's talking about. Talise Fuaga. Go ahead, Tigo. You can take him.
I love Fuaga. If Fuaga, to me, this is the first deviation where I look at Olu and I look at Alt. Like when you look at Fashanu and when you look at Alt, I look at true left tackles. They should be left tackles. And I think Alt can play right tackle, but I think that's a mismanagement of his skills. I think when I look at Fashanu and when I look at Alt, these are guys that should come into the NFL and immediately be your left tackle, and then you don't think about it for the next 10 to 15 years. And when I look at Fuaga, I look at, this is your best right tackle in this class. Talise Fuaga is going to, if you need a right tackle, if you need a guy who's going to play that position exceptionally well, Talise Fuaga is your guy, in my opinion. Talise Fuaga is a guy that I had fallen in love with because, like, again, for those of you who know, I come from a Jets channel. So when I started doing my evaluations, it was from a New York Jets kind of mindset and where we were picking and who might we be able to get before I moved on from getting an offensive tackle in the first round. And Talise Fuaga was a guy I spent a lot of time on. At 6'6", 335 pounds, the guy is incredible. And the thing I love about Fuaga is I think he has the best and the strongest hands in this entire class. I've seen Talise Fuaga stop edge rushers with one punch straight up, just doom, stopped in their tracks. And
Yeah.
you see him do that consistently. And this is where you're going to see him do and really excel in the NFL is moving forward. Talise Fuaga is a guy who's going to absolutely dominate in the run game. And again, he's got to fix his footwork to match his hands when it comes to his pass protection. I think he needs to get a little bit more patient in pass protection. You can see how antsy he is to get to contact. So he's playing a little bit off balance sometimes, which isn't great. You see a lot, especially at the NFL level, when you've got these speed to power guys who are going to just try to get over and then just come right into you. If you don't have that anchor, if you don't have that ability to, be patient and let them come to you, you can get beat by those guys. And we've seen that from Fuaga, but I think he can overcome those issues. And when you talk about a true dog in the run game, that's Fuaga. He plays well beyond the whistle without getting, like called for fouls on all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Again, another guy with long arms and really understands leverage and how to move people. Excellent hand placement. I love Fuaga as a true right tackle. You need a right tackle. You need someone that you can, hand it off to a running back and run behind them consistently. Fuaga's your guy. You get all of that 6'6", 335 pounds out into space, and he's going to make some men move, and he's going to make some DBs really, really scared to run into that block.
Yeah. So I'm going to respectfully disagree with one thing that you did say about Fuaga. I don't know, and I could be wrong, and which is fine, but I think one of the bigger problems, and why there's been some grumblings. Now, I agree with you. I think that he's a right tackle, and I think he could stay at right tackle.
Yep.
But I don't know if he's got the longest arms. I think he's more.
I don't think he's got long arms. I think he's got the best arm, like the best hands.
Gotcha.
That's what, not long arms.
I thought you said long arms in there also.
I might have, but I didn't mean it because I think Joe Alt has the biggest wingspan. I mean, I think he has the best hands, like when it comes to placement and the first punch and the strength.
Yeah. The thing, like I said, with Fuaga, which is kind of complete opposite of Joe Alt, is I think Fuaga is a lot more scheme specific. He's going to be a team, that runs more of a power run kind of scheme, where he can get in there and he can, demolish and just demolish defensive tackles on those downs or duos and clear out those edge rushers. He's a mauler in the run game. I think you hit that on the head. I think I think he struggles a little bit with speed sometimes on the outside for the speed rush, the speed rushers, and guys that get up into his body a little bit faster. Again, he's got a good anchor, but if you can get up into his body, you can kind of get to Fuaga a little bit.
Yeah.
So
speed to power is going to be an issue for him.
Yeah, he protects it very well. He protects those deficiencies very well. But I think that there's some of that stuff can be a little bit more glaring at the next level when everyone is an all-star in the NFL, pretty much. So speed is going to be an issue. Guys that transfer speed to power are going to be a big issue if they can get it on time. I just don't think sometimes he's a little bit slow of foot, lacks a little bit of the foot speed to keep up with that guy. There's a possibility that he could end up, becoming an all-world guard, but I agree with you. I think what he can offer in the run game, especially a team with a power running scheme, I think the Rams, would be freaking, he'd be perfect for the Rams. You know, he'd be perfect for any team. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say that, but that's the first team I thought of. So, yeah, listen, I like Fuaga as a prospect a whole heck of a lot, and arguably there's there's an argument to be made that I'm not going to say he's definitely going to be the third tackle taken off the board, but it's pretty probable. It's pretty. The name is catching a lot of buzz, and I think everyone's catching on to how good he really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to come down to, are you okay with taking a right tackle over a left tackle when it comes to that third pick? Because I think Latham, and you'll talk about him in a second, probably fits a better mold of a left tackle. And if you're going into this draft where you need a left tackle, I personally I would not put Fuaga in that position.
Yeah.
I think it's a disservice to him to put him on that left side. And
No,
so
I think there's more of a possibility that he moves inside before he moves to the left tackle.
I agree.
So, but Latham, let's talk about Latham while he's up there. He's number 4 on both of our boards, and I'm going to tell you this: by the time April comes, he might be higher on my board. I've really, he's a prospect that the more I watch him, the more I really like his game. Like truth be told, a month and a half ago, he was at like number 9 or number 10 for me.
Yeah.
I just didn't, last year's film was okay, but I, and maybe I just watched games that weren't, maybe his best, but I came away rather unimpressed. But this year, I thought he's been playing really good. Now, this is a guy, he's another huge man, 6'6". He's listed at 340, but I think he plays more around 360.
That's
But
the weight I have him listed at on my board.
yeah,
Is 6'6", 360.
but the crazy thing is the guy moves like someone who's 260 pounds. You wouldn't know he was that big if you watch him play. He's a guy who started his career inside before moving last year and played every snap at right tackle. I thought the progression would have him move over to the left side this year, and it hasn't. Now, I think he's got enough skill and overall game that he can hang on the left side, but I think he could also be a dominant right tackle. Like I said, he's a big boy. And like I said, the way he moves and as flexible as he is for a guy, pushing 360 pounds is insane. Um,
Yeah.
he's a good knee. He's a knee bender for someone that big. That's very important. You don't want to see him, bending at the waist and having all that mass. Too far over his knees. He bends at the knees very good. Good flexibility. Good ankle flexion. So that helps him keep balance. I think that's a big thing for him is that he knows like how to use his size and how to keep balance under him exceptionally well. Like I said, for a guy this big, he shouldn't move as well as he is. Very good quickness, very good feet. Again, just like the other 3 guys that we talked about, packs a huge punch with his hands. Can get them from gets from the inside, just drives a lot of power, just pure brute strength that he has. And he's there's times where you just watch him, especially yesterday's game, where he just absolutely manhandles people like he's playing against an 8th grader. That's what he makes some guys look. He's learned how to effectively, and this is a good skill I think for offensive tackle to use that that drag, that snatch, and just get those guys right to the ground. Like I said, he can move people. He's got size, length, power, movement skills. He checks every box, dude. He checks every single box. Now, the thing that why isn't he higher? Someone all this like I said, he hasn't been doing it at the tackle position all that long, so he needs a little bit more polish. He's still a little bit raw. Especially in especially in certain points, he seems to overextend.
Yeah.
Whether it's his kick step and he gets too wide and gets somebody quick beats him to the inside, or he overextends those arms and kind of starts to wobble a little bit. all that stuff, the awareness that comes in, picking up the games that happen on the front. This is stuff that it could be hit or miss with him at times. So I think it's that he needs still a little bit more polish on that pearl to really turn it into a diamond. But he is just oozing with traits and oozing with talent, and I would love to see what happens to a guy with all that stuff once he gets into an NFL weight room and working with an NFL, a true high level NFL line coach. Um, and I think, like I said, I think the sky's the limit. I think he's a plug and play. I think he's a plug and play player.
Yeah, I have some concerns with Latham. We've been burned by the huge tackle, like as Jets fans, right? With Mekhi Becton and managing, like, and Mekhi Becton being able to manage his weight. I think Latham has been able to do that. It is still something that I fear, and it has been something that I have heard of, is he wants to be playing at a lower weight. He wants to be playing closer to 340, but he does struggle with managing his weight. Hopefully you get him into an NFL locker room with dietitians and all of the medical personnel, and he can help manage that at a lot better. Definitely a guy that you can tell in his game feels much more comfortable moving backwards than going forwards, in terms of he is much better and much more comfortable in his pass pro than in his run game. But even with that, you can tell he's got that killer mentality in him. In the run game, he wants to finish blocks and be a mauler and get his hands on people. But I think the word that you used for him is the perfect word. He is raw. He is very, very raw. But I don't think that should turn you off from going and getting a guy like JC Latham. I have Fuaga higher than him, and while JC Latham technically has only ever played right tackle, I think he has, like you said, I think he truly has the athleticism and the skill set to put him at left tackle. And I think that's probably where he would be better served, is at left tackle. A guy who's more comfortable in pass pro than he is in the run game and all of those things. I think he'd be better served on the blind side versus on the right. And I think maybe that's something that Alabama, we all know that these colleges aren't always doing what's best for the player in terms of their draft stock. And I think this might be an area where Alabama is kind of letting JC down. I think that if he would have moved to left tackle, he could have legitimately been in a much better position, because I have him securely at 4, and that's great. That's a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. But I think that if he would have been moved to the left tackle and really been allowed to shine in pass pro a little bit more, I think we would have maybe been talking about a guy like JC Latham as a more polished prospect as a left tackle. It's a whole lot of what ifs and blah, blah, blah. We don't know. But I just think that truthfully, I think JC Latham's home should be at left tackle, and Alabama playing him at right has been a disservice to him.
I don't know about disservice. Listen, I think he's been a right tackle that can, kind of move over to the left side, just like the kid from Tampa Bay, Tristan Wirfs, right? He came into college as a right tackle, and now it's year 4, and he's transitioned to left and hasn't skipped a beat. Again, I'm not trying to compare JC Latham to Tristan Wirfs, but that same mentality. Like, Tristan Wirfs was drafted as a right tackle. I think Latham's going to draft as a right tackle. And I don't agree with you that he's not good in the run. I just think that there's
no. He's better in pass pro than he is in the run. That's what I'm trying to say. I think he's better pass.
I don't know about that. I think he's equally good as well, but he's equally has his faults. Listen, he's going to be a prospect. Here's what I think Latham. All right, he's going to be a prospect that comes in and plays really, really good, but then he's going to have, especially early on, like I said, he's going to have a little bit more of a learning curve than somebody like Fashanu or all at the next level. Penalties have always been a big thing with Latham.
Yeah.
I could see him, having one or two of those blow up games where, he gets called for, 3 holding penalties and lets up 3 sacks or something like that. He's gonna take his lumps at some point, but
I think he's going to be very inconsistent year 1.
Yeah, but that's
you're going to see one game where he's going to blow up and then one game where he's going to get blown up. That's fine, right? Because like by year 3, you should know what he is.
Yeah.
But I think that I totally agree. I think in year 1, you're going to see some inconsistencies in his game. Definitely.
Well, I mean, those are the four that we had matching, and they happen to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Why don't you go
Yeah.
ahead and just pick another guy and tell us about him? Pick a guy that. Why don't you take one of the guys that I don't have on there, either Fatanu or Barton, and talk about him?
I was going to talk about Barton
Okay.
because I love Barton. I love the idea of Graham Barton and what he brings. And you don't have him on your list right now because I think you have him as an interior guy. Quick question. Is he your number one interior guy?
He is my number one interior guy right
Okay,
now.
so that makes sense. But Graham Barton is one of those guys where I'm going to take a stand. I am going to be, I don't care about the guys with the arm length issues and the Graham Barton. Fatanu is a little bit my number 9. He's more than likely an inside guy, just size, straight up size kind of a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fatanu is 6'4", 315. He's better served being a guard, but Graham Barton, 6'5", 220 pounds. And the thing I love about Barton and the reason I have him on this list is I might legitimately have Graham Barton on every single one of my offensive line lists. I'm going to have him probably in the top 10 or top 5, top 10 when it's all said and done for offensive tackles. Definitely going to be in the top 5 for the guards. With how relatively weak the center class is, I might put him in the center class. He gives you true and just like legitimately true 5-position flexibility. You need him at left tackle, play him at left tackle. You need him at right tackle, play him at right tackle. You need him at one of the guard positions, play him at guard. Give him like 6 days. I think he can play center. When you're looking for a do-it-all offensive lineman, a guy that you can say, you know what? I don't know who my best 5 is, but I just want to put my best 5 out there. Graham Barton is going to go to an NFL team, and he is going to be one of the best 5 offensive linemen. Now, that might not be at tackle. That might be at guard. That might be at center. That might be wherever it is that you want to put him. But I think that level of the value that comes with that level of positional flexibility, the ability to be that big and that weight and still be able to move the way that he does. I think he moves pretty well, I think he has excellent football IQ. I think he's got really good hand placement. He's a guy that I think feels comfortable going forward and going backwards. Now, he's definitely got things in his games that he definitely needs to improve on. I think he needs to come up with a better pass protection plan when it comes to dealing with guys and all of that stuff. And, I think that he's got to work more on trying to be more athletic with his size. I think he might be stiff is not the right word because I don't think stiff is the right. I think that's a little bit too far. Whatever between fluid and stiff is, that's where he's at. And you'd like to see him be a little bit more fluid. But I think the versatility of having a guy that any given week can play legitimately any of the 5 positions is such a good tool to have. As Jets fans, we've seen that level of flexibility from a guy like Elijah Vera Tucker, who last year played all 4 not center positions on the offensive line. He played right guard, played left guard, he played left tackle, he played right tackle. And having a guy that no matter what is going on in whatever situation, whoever goes down, that you have a high level backup in that position in Graham Barton. Like, because you can drop him in at left guard and know if anything happens to your tackles, you've got a really high-level guy who wasn't sitting on the bench. He was out there and he was playing. You're just going to move him over a slot or 3, depending on if he goes to right tackle, left tackle, all that stuff. And that's why I have Graham Barton on my tackle list, is just because I think you're right. I think when he gets to the NFL, he's going to end up as a guard. But I think sooner rather than later, he's going to get his shot at one of the tackle spots. And I don't know, once he gets there, I don't know if he gives that job back.
Listen, I think Graham Barton's a very nice prospect. He's probably going to be a top 50, top 60 guy. So I see him coming off the board at some point in day 2, maybe even earlier. There might be a team that just falls in love, and really like him. But I think he's going to be typecasted. I think he's definitely going to have to be in an outside zone kind of concept where he can use that movement skill and get to the second level much better. He's not much of a people mover. You know what I mean? And for a guy who fires out quick and, like I said, can move vertically very well, I hasten to, or I question really, how much he's going to really affect the game, when somebody's lined up overhead, mano a mano, power blocking, one-on-one situations. I think he's going into, he's going to struggle a little bit. So I
Yeah.
think the guard is going to be probably the better spot for him. Could be wrong, but he's a guy I think can come in for a pinch and fill in for a series or two or a game or two at the tackle position. But I think his home is going to be inside somewhere, one of those three spots.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I just he's the guy. He's specifically the guy in this class where I think Fatanu probably you just put him at guard. I think that's the best home for him.
Yeah.
But Barton is the guy that I think that I think you should give him a shot at tackle. I like Barton enough. I think he goes in the first round. I have him as I have him as a first round pick, late first round pick on my board. But I think he should get a shot at tackle before pigeonholing him at guard. But I think you're right. I think somebody is definitely going to probably end up, looking at him and typecasting him as a guard.
Yeah, probably. Before we wrap up, I figured I'd just kick it with one more prospect.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go 3-3. I'm gonna touch on a guy who I was very, very high on, but has recently kind of just like dropped down. And I'm not gonna say that he dropped down because I watch his game and then all of a sudden now think he stinks. I just think some guys have kind of surpassed him, and that's Patrick Paul from Houston. All right. We both have him on our list. Actually, we both have him at 8. Again, another big guy, 6'7", 320. He's a left tackle. I think. I think he's a left tackle in the next level. At the NFL level. Really, really good length. Wide base. Sets a strong. He's a strong guy. Sets a strong anchor in pass protection. Does a good job of resetting when he gets pushed off of that anchor a little bit. Maintains leverage very well. All that good stuff. Really, really plays with a chip on his shoulder. And I think that's what I like most about his game. I think there's something about those big old nasties that kind of does it for me. In the run game, he's just, he kind of falls under that mauler trait. He gets the job done at the point of attack. He can get into the second level, pretty easily and, just bury linebackers or jokers or safeties that are, come across his face, all that stuff. Where I think Paul struggles a little bit and why I think I've bumped him down my board is, he's got that very typical, like, tall tackle syndrome, right? Where sometimes it seems like he can't get low enough, doesn't sink the hips well. So that will cause him to lose that leverage battle to those shorter, stouter, stronger defensive tackles and defensive ends. So, he's a little bit slow, to get out of his stance and, doing that and not being able to sink down low enough. You're going to lose leverage to these defensive tackles and defensive defensive ends, and you're going to, lose your lunch every single time at the next level. Definitely needs to work on his footwork a little bit and his kick step and his pass sets. A little bit inconsistent with his hand placement. These are all just technique things. Like I said, I think for a guy like Patrick Paul playing in Houston, he's been able to dominate just with his physical presence and that mean, nasty streak that he's had. I think why I wanted to talk about him is I think he's one of the guys in the next, out of the, say, from 5 to 15 that I think can for sure sit and land at left tackle. But he's going to need some technique help. This is not a guy that you want to come and play. This is a guy that you probably want to take a quote unquote redshirt year of, and let him sit behind and learn a little bit. Definitely work with an O-line coach and get better on his technique, with both his hands and his feet and get him a little bit stronger in his core and his hips so that he's able to sink a little bit better and not lose so much ground in the leverage game. I think Paul's probably a, day 3 pick, or I'm sorry, a round 3, maybe top of round 4 pick. Somewhere along the lines where Blake Freeland went last year, which was, right around what, like 100, 110.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of in that similar mold where, given the right tools and given the right coaching, I think he has the opportunity to become a player, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah. I think I have him this high on my list because of that. I think the where I think disagree a little bit with Patrick's evaluation is I actually think that he is kind of fundamentally sound. I think that his feet are good enough and his hands are good enough. I think that where he struggles is with the speed of the game because I don't think he's got like bad footwork because when you see bad footwork and when you see bad hand placement. I just don't think he plays with enough speed with his footwork and strength with his hands for a guy who's as big as he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's 6'7", and you can tell that he's not at 6'7". You should be physically imposing, especially at one of the tackle positions. I think he plays at what 320. I think believe is what he's listed at.
Yeah, right around. That's what he's listed at. I don't know what he's playing at, but
and so. And you're absolutely right with his like he has problems with like his balance and getting his weight over his toes because he's so big and he's like he's not getting low enough and he's not winning. Like lowest man wins, right? And that's a place where he's definitely struggling. But I think what you said is perfect. I think you can probably take him and I think you can probably start him. I think you got to work on balance issues. I think that's where his big issue specifically is. But I love Patrick Paul I have him as a bottom of the second guy.
Yeah.
Well,
listen, I got him in the 3rd round. I got him in the 3rd round. I'm not going to say I have a 3rd round grade on him. He's a guy that if he went to Miami at 25, I'm just shooting a name and that it wouldn't surprise me, Yep. But I think more than likely, with some of those deficiencies that he's shown on film and really not been pressed against the best of the best competition. Like he accepted a Senior Bowl invite, so I think that week is going to be huge for him.
Big.
That's going to really make or break a guy like Patrick Paul to see if he's going to be really that end of the 1st, beginning of the 2nd round talent, or he falls to round 3, beginning of round 4.
We saw that happen last year with guys like Wright and Jones who went to the Senior Bowl and their stock went
skyrocketed
up until we found out that Jones wanted to play basketball and that he fell for some reason. And in the opposite, we saw that with who was the tackle out of BYU last year?
Blake Freeland,
who went and a lot of people had him as a 2nd round pick and he didn't do all that well in the Senior Bowl. And then he kind of fell off of people's boards. I think that shout out is perfect.
Yeah.
Patrick Paul going to the Senior Bowl is going to either solidify him as like this guy's a day 2 pick, might sneak into the 1st round, or this guy's a day 2 pick, might sneak into day 3. And it's one or the other.
The Senior Bowl and how he tests at the combine, all that stuff, plays a part. But like I said, I think the talent is there. Just needs a little bit more refining. It needs a little bit more time. He's a guy that needs a little bit more time. So, listen, those are a few tackles that we talked about. There's these lists and these rankings that we're giving you now. These are going to change by the time April comes. This is just what we're seeing right now. There's a lot more film to watch, and there's a lot more guys that names that we haven't been talking about. A whole heck of a lot. Our intention is to give you guys everything that we can, position group wise, top to bottom. So, we knocked out the wide receivers already. We're talking about the tackles. We'll probably get into the interior offensive linemen next week. And just go from there, man. But it's exciting. It's time. This is we've cracked into draft season. Like it or not, people. Hopefully your team is good enough that you still got some playoff aspirations, but unfortunately,
We don't.
Tigo and I root for the Jets, and we do not. So it's all draft all the time.
And remember, guys, the other thing is that these initial positional breakdowns aren't supposed to be end all be all of these prospects. The idea is just to get some of these names into your head so that you kind of have a basis so that once we start getting into this offseason and we can do full 20-minute segments on individual players and every week talk about our favorite guys and go really that these names aren't just dropped out of a hat, guys that you don't know of. And that's the idea. So again, don't worry about it. If we didn't talk about one of your guys that's in the top 10, we get it. I love a lot of these guys, especially I want to talk about Amarius Mims. I think he's very, very interesting. We're going to get to it. Jordan Morgan is slowly but surely becoming one of my favorite prospects to talk about in this draft out of Arizona. We'll get to all of these guys eventually. We just want to get these names out there so that you know who we're talking about when I can go on my 30-minute rant on why I love Michael Pratt out of Tulane.
And guys, reach out to us, touch something, leave a comment. Tell us who you want us to talk about. Tell us a positional group that you want us to talk about, before one or the other. We'll be happy to oblige if we can. So, that being said, look at the scrolling pretty little banner at the bottom here, guys. We're going to put out this podcast once a week to you guys. If you haven't liked or subscribed to Project Prospect with Dom C, please do. It helps a lot. Leave a comment, like the videos, or don't like the videos. That's okay too. But any and all of your support during this draft cycle or throughout the year is very, very much appreciated, and it helps me feel good about the content that I'm putting out to you guys. So, Tigo, any last words?
No, that's it. Like I said, I'm not going to be as nice as Dom. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. You don't have an option. We know you liked the content, especially if you're this far into the video. Do all that stuff. Don't forget to leave your sacrifice to the algorithm gods in the comment section and let us know. I think that's the most important thing, and I want to harp on again. Let us know in the comments what I read every single one of the comments. I try to respond to the ones that are directed at me, and let us know what you want us to do. We want this to be interactive. We want you guys to be a part of the channel in a big, big way. So do your part. Leave a comment. Hit the like button. We love you guys.
That's right. On behalf of my esteemed colleague, Tigo with Talking Jets with Tigo, you can find him at Jets with Tigo on Twitter. You can find me at DC_NYJets on Twitter, on the YouTube channel, Project Prospect with Dom C. Till the next positional group.